The discrepancy that started this was $1,100 worth of road salt. My name doesn't matter, but my title does, because everything I'm about to describe I saw through the lens of that title. Senior Winter Operations Supervisor for a county road department in the northern half of a state I'd rather not name. I've held the position for 9 years. Before that, I was a route foreman, and before that I ran a plow for 6 winters on the state highway contracts. So when I tell you I know what a lane mile is, I mean I know it the way you know the length of your own driveway. Every spring, my office reconciles our winter storm response against the state's snow emergency reimbursement program. The state pays us back for salt, fuel, overtime, and equipment hours expended on state system roadways during declared events. The reimbursement formula is built on lane miles serviced. You cannot bill a lane mile that does not exist in the state's roadway inventory, because the inventory is what the auditors check your invoices against. Last April, the state kicked back our reimbursement package with a variance flag. Across 4 declared storm events, we had documented salt application on 3.4 lane miles more than the inventory said we maintained. Not per storm, consistently, every storm, the same 3.4 lane miles. The salt tonnage matched, the fuel matched, the plow hours matched, the roadway didn't. $1,100 in salt. That's what the variance was worth the first time I looked at it. The question the state wanted answered was simple. Where were my trucks putting that salt? I want to be clear about what I expected to find, because it matters for everything that came after. I expected GPS drift. Every AVL system, automatic vehicle location, the fleet trackers bolted into our trucks accumulates positional error, especially in canyon terrain, especially in heavy precipitation. Failing that, I expected route duplication, 2 trucks credited for the same segment. Failing that, contractor padding. We supplement our fleet with private plow contractors during major events, and a contractor billing phantom miles is the single most ordinary form of fraud in this business. Boring explanations. I have spent a career finding boring explanations, and I am good at it, and I say that so you understand how hard I tried to find one here. I started with the AVL data because the AVL data is what the salt controllers key off of. Our spreaders are ground speed oriented and location logged. The truck knows where it is, how fast it's moving, and how many pounds per lane mile it's dropping, and it writes all of it to a record every few seconds. I pulled the raw tracks for all 4 storm events and overlaid them on the county GIS roadway layer. The extra lane miles weren't scattered. They weren't drift. Drift smears. It doesn't organize. Every excess mile concentrated in one location, a tight cluster of track geometry coming off State Route 40 at approximately milepost 14, on the long grade east of the river, where the highway runs a causeway section between 2 drainage basins. The tracks showed our trucks decelerating off the main line, executing a ramp curve, a real ramp curve, a proper deceleration taper, gore area, the works, running about 600 feet of what the geometry suggested was a 2-lane exit ramp, working a loop at the bottom, and climbing back to the main line on a matching acceleration ramp. An interchange. The tracks described an interchange. There is no interchange at milepost 14 on State Route 40. I have driven that grade several hundred times. It's a causeway. There is nothing to exit to. The nearest legal access is the county road tie-in at milepost 11 and the way station at milepost 17. The state roadway inventory shows nothing between them. The as-built construction drawings from the 1971 realignment show nothing between them. The Federal Highway Performance Monitoring System sample data shows nothing. I checked all three that first week, and I want you to notice that at this point I still believed I was investigating a data problem, because that's what a rational person believes. Then I pulled the salt controller records for the trucks whose tracks entered the ramp geometry, and I stopped believing it was a data problem. The controllers don't just log position, they log application. Every truck that ran that geometry was actively spreading pre-wet salt at 250 pounds per lane mile, our standard ramp rate, which is heavier than our mainline rate because ramps hold ice. The controllers had shifted rates at the gore point. Somebody or something in the programming knew where the ramp started and treated it like a ramp. You cannot drift your way into a rate change. A rate change is either an operator input or a route file trigger, so I pulled the route files. Our plow routes live as digital assignments in the dispatch system, sequence segment lists that tell each operator what to hit and in what order. Route 6, which covers the SR40 grade, is one of our oldest continuous assignments. I opened the current season's file and there it was, sitting between the milepost 12 curve treatment and the milepost 17 way station apron, as unremarkable as a driveway. SEG 611, Exit 14B, RAMPS Loop Gore, Priority 2, both DIRECTIONS, Treat ASI Sprone. Exit 14B. I searched the dispatch system's archive. The segment appeared in every retained season back to the beginning of digital records in 2004. Before that, our routes were paper route cards, and the cards are boxed in the equipment barn mezzanine. And yes, I went and got them, and yes, it's on the cards. The oldest card that survives is Winter 1988-89, typed on a manual typewriter, and segment 11 reads Exit 14B, ramps and loop, salt heavy, watch the bottom curve. 36 years, minimum, of a standing instruction to plow an exit that is not on any map, drawing, or inventory that any transportation agency maintains. I did what you do. I asked the people who drive it. There are 4 operators currently assigned to Route 6 across our shift structure, and 2 retirees I could reach who ran it before them. I interviewed all 6, separately, in the normal course of what I framed as a reimbursement documentation review, which was even true. I expected embarrassment. I expected somebody to say, "Oh, that's the old turnaround, we just call it 14B, it's not really an exit." Plow crews name things. Every route has its own private geography, the Widowmaker, the Bowl, Church Hill, informal names for formal places. I expected Exit 14B to be a nickname for a maintenance pull-off. What I got instead was 6 people describing the same infrastructure in the flat, bored tone that operators reserve for things they have serviced 100 times. 2-lane directional exit ramp. Deceleration length a little short by modern standards. One of them, unprompted, called it a 60s ramp, which matches the era of the highway. A loop at the bottom with a super-elevated curve that ices badly on the inside lane. Guardrail on the outside of the loop, W-beam, older galvanization. A couple of sections that have been replaced over the years and don't match the weathering of the rest. A green exit sign at the gore. Every one of them asked what the sign says, gave the same answer with the same small pause, and the pause is the detail I think about most. The sign says Exit 14B and nothing else. No destination legend. No town name, no route shield, no next SERVICES. Just the exit number, which is not how exit signage works, and every one of these men has driven past enough exit signs to know it, and not one of them had ever mentioned it to anyone, because it is not their job to read signs. It is their job to keep the ramp clear. The oldest retiree, a man who ran Route 6 from 1979 to 1998, told me the instruction predated him. His trainer had walked him through the route in the cab the way it's always done, and at milepost 14 the trainer had said, "You'll take the ramp here when it's snowing. Don't look for it when it's not." That's not a riddle, the retiree told me, seeing my face. That's just how he said it. You take the ramp when it's snowing. In July, there's no reason to be there, so nobody's there in July. He seemed to genuinely regard this as a complete explanation. I asked him if he'd ever seen a car use the exit. He thought about it longer than I liked. "Tracks," he said finally. "You'd see tire tracks in the fresh snow at the bottom sometimes before you got there, coming off the loop. Never saw the car." Then he said the thing that I have not been able to file anywhere in my head since. You'd plow over them, and that was that. You don't stop to study tracks at 3 in the morning at the bottom of a ramp. You keep your blade down and you keep moving. That's how you stay all right out there. I want to tell you about the guardrail, because the guardrail is where my boring explanations died completely. In our maintenance management system, work orders are tied to asset locations. I ran a query for every work order within a half-mile of milepost 14 on SR40, all categories, full history. 211 work orders since electronic records began. Guardrail section replacements, 14 of them, with purchase orders for W-beam panels, posts, and hardware. Materials received and drawn down from our yard inventory, which balances. Sign replacement twice. Line items for one extruded aluminum exit panel type E legend. Exit 14B. Fabricated by our own regional sign shop, which confirmed the orders when I called and faxed me the fabrication spec sheets, and did not understand why I was asking. Drainage clearing at the loop's low point almost every spring, logged, crewed, and billed in early March, always during the last storms of the season, never once in summer. Blade wear analysis on Route 6 trucks showing edge consumption consistent with the route's documented lane miles, including the ramp segment. Fuel burn consistent. Overtime consistent. Do you understand what I'm describing? I'm describing an interchange with a complete, internally consistent maintenance history, materials purchased, installed, weathered, damaged, and replaced across 4 decades. That exists in every operational system we run, and in no engineering or mapping system anyone runs. The infrastructure has depreciation. It has a repair cadence. Someone hit that guardrail hard enough to take out 3 sections in February 2011. I have the work order, the photos of the damaged rail loaded on our flatbed, and the invoice for its scrap weight disposal. I do not have a road for it to be beside. The photographs. I should be precise about the photographs because they're the piece people will fixate on. Our work orders include field photos. There are dozens attached to the 14B work orders, and they all share one property. They were all taken during active winter operations. Snowfall, or blowing snow, or the flat sodium orange dark of a night storm lit by beacon strobes. Guardrail with snow on it. The gore sign with rime ice built out horizontally from its edges. The loop curve, plowed, banked with windrows. Perfectly ordinary photographs of perfectly ordinary infrastructure in perfectly ordinary storm conditions. There is not one photograph of exit 14B taken in clear weather in 40 years of records, and when I noticed that, I did the obvious thing. I drove out there on a dry day in late April. Milepost 14 is a causeway grade with rumble strip, guardrail running continuous on both shoulders, continuous. No gaps, no gore, no taper, and cattail marsh below on both sides. I walked it. I walked both shoulders for a full mile, marker to marker, with the AVL track plot printed out in my hand, standing on the exact stationing where 3 months earlier truck 421 had decelerated, changed its application rate, and descended a ramp. There is no ramp. There is no earthwork that could ever have held a ramp. The embankment drops 11 feet into standing water. I found no old pavement, no post stubs, no fill scars. I flew our department drone the length of the section. I pulled county aerial photography going back to 1974 and state orthoimagery and the commercial satellite layers everyone has on their phone. Marsh. Causeway. Marsh. Every image, every year, every season. Every season the imagery was flown, I should say. It took me an embarrassingly long time to notice that aerial photography is not flown during snowstorms. No one photographs anything during the only conditions under which my department has ever seen this exit. I took it to my director in early May. I brought the variance letter, the AVL overlays, the route card from 1988, the sign shop spec sheet, and the guardrail disposal invoice, and I laid it out the way I'd lay out a fraud case, because that's the only professional container I had that was roughly the right shape. He heard me out. He's a careful man, an engineer by training, and he did not laugh at me, which I'd half hoped he would. When I finished, he was quiet for a while, and then he asked me a question I was not prepared for. "What's your recommendation?" I said the segment should be removed from Route 6 pending verification, and the unreimbursable lane miles written off, and the whole thing referred to the state for an inventory reconciliation. "The state kicked it back to us," he said. "They don't want it reconciled. They want it to stop appearing on invoices." He tapped the route card. "You're recommending we stop plowing it." "I'm recommending we stop plowing something that isn't there." "Something that isn't there in April," he said, and that was the whole sentence. He didn't argue the impossibility. He never once in any conversation we've had disputed a single piece of my evidence. And I've come to understand that's because he'd seen the file before. Somewhere in a previous decade, some version of my investigation had crossed some version of his desk. He approved the removal of segment 611 from the route assignment, effective the following season, with the write-off buried in the SALT budget. He signed it. But when he handed it back, he said, in the tone of a man reading a liability disclaimer aloud, "Document your reasoning thoroughly. If we get incidents on that grade this winter, this decision gets reviewed." I documented my reasoning thoroughly. I was proud of that file. I am less proud of it now. The first declared storm of the following season arrived the second week of December, a warm advection event, heavy wet snow turning to ice, the worst kind for that grade. Route 6 ran with the amended assignment. Mainline treatment through milepost 14, no ramp segment, exactly as I'd specified. Here is what happened, and I'm going to give it to you in the dry sequence it holds in the incident reports, because the dryness is the point. At 02:14, Truck 421's operator radioed dispatch requesting confirmation that segment 611 was deleted. Dispatch confirmed. The operator's response is on the recording. Copy. Passing it now. It's not been touched. 4 words that should be meaningless. It's not been touched. You cannot fail to plow a ramp that does not exist, and a ramp that does not exist cannot be visibly unplowed, and a 20-year operator does not key up at 2 in the morning to report the snow depth on a marsh. At 02:51, the road weather station at milepost 15, a fixed sensor site, stay-toned, that I do not control and had no reason to think about, recorded a friction reading on the eastbound mainline that dropped off its calibrated scale. Pavement temperature data went non-physical for 9 minutes. The state flagged it as a sensor fault. It has never faulted before or since. At 03:20, an eastbound semi lost the grade at milepost 14.3 and went through the guardrail, the real guardrail, the continuous one, the one I walked in April, and down the embankment into the marsh. The driver survived. His statement to the state patrol says he swerved to avoid a passenger car that was entering the highway in front of him, accelerating up an on-ramp. There is no on-ramp. The trooper noted the discrepancy and attributed it to disorientation. The trooper also photographed the scene, and in one photograph in the background, beyond the wrecked truck, there is a plowed windrow bank curving away downslope through the falling snow in a direction where no road goes. And I have stared at that photograph for a very long time, and I have not asked the state patrol about it, because I already know they will tell me it's a snowdrift. At 04:40, two of my trucks running the parallel county detour route, the route that absorbs traffic when SR40 closes, which it now had, were overwhelmed by volume our salt allocation model had never assigned to that corridor. Because the model, I discovered when I tore it apart in January, carries exit 14B as a load-bearing node. Our storm response plan distributes treatment priority based on a network model of how traffic moves during closures, and somewhere in decades of incremental tuning, the model learned that a certain amount of storm traffic exits the system at milepost 14. Remove the node and the model's assumptions cascade. Detour volumes overrun their salt assignments. Dispatch sequencing degrades. Response times slip network-wide. I didn't program that. Nobody I can find programmed that. The model was tuned against historical outcomes, and the historical outcomes include the exit. And so the exit is load-bearing whether or not it is real, the way a number can be load-bearing in a bridge. We had 4 more incidents on the grade that night. Our seasonal average for that section over the preceding decade was 4 per winter. The review my director promised me happened in February. It was short. I sat across from him with my thorough file and he slid a single sheet across the table, the amended route assignment for the remainder of the season, segment 611 restored, my initials required at the bottom. Priority 2. Both directions. Treat as ice-prone. I can't initial this, I said. I'd be certifying maintenance on infrastructure that doesn't exist. You'd be certifying maintenance on infrastructure we maintain, he said. Those aren't the same thing, and you know it better than anyone in this building now. I initialed it. The incidents on the grade stopped the following storm. Our trucks took the ramp, the salt controllers stepped up their rates at the gore, and the operator of truck 421 reported segment 611 clear at 03:05. Voice as bored as a man reading a fuel receipt. There is one more thing, and it's the reason I'm writing this down instead of retiring quietly, which was my plan. In March, doing penance, I rebuilt our mutual aid documentation, the interagency agreements under which neighboring counties lend each other trucks during major events. Buried in the equipment routing appendices, each county lists the route segments a borrowed truck may be assigned to, so the lending county's insurance carrier knows the exposure. I had never read the neighboring county's appendices closely. No one reads appendices closely. The county to our north lists a segment on their state highway coded Annex. The county southeast of us lists Access 22, winter only. The county across the river in the next state entirely, under a different dot, a different federal district, different everything, lists a segment their route sheets call Exit 31A, and I pulled that state's roadway inventory through the public portal, and there is no Exit 31A, and I already knew there wouldn't be before the query finished running. 4 jurisdictions, 4 route codes, 4 standing instructions, none acknowledged by any transportation agency, all quietly load-bearing in the mutual aid math, which means when our trucks cross the county line during a regional event, the paperwork already anticipates that they may be assigned to clear an exit that their home county's maps have never heard of. Someone drafted those appendices. The agreements are renewed every 3 years. 12 signatures sit on the current cycle, mine now among them, and I renewed ours without comment, the way the 11 others presumably did, the way whoever preceded all of us presumably did. I no longer believe anyone is hiding exit 14 be hiding, requires someone who knows. What I believe, what the evidence supports, and I will only say what the evidence supports, is that winter operations across this region have spent 40 years or more adapting around infrastructure that becomes serviceable when we service it, the way an organization adapts around any hard operational fact, incrementally, procedurally, without ever needing a single person to hold the whole picture. The maps document the summer road. The route sheets document the winter road. Both systems are accurate. That is the sentence I have not been able to get past all spring. Both systems are accurate. Next season's route assignments went out last week. Segment 611 is on them, in my formatting, under my authorization code. The salt allocation model carries the node. The sign shop has a Type E exit panel in fabricated stock because the Gore sign is due for replacement on its normal cycle, and the work order is already scheduled for the first declared event of the season, when the crew can get to it. When it's snowing, you take the ramp when it's snowing. I've started checking the extended forecast in September, which I never used to do. And on the last storm deployment of this past season, riding along in 421 with my clipboard and my ride-along notes, I watched the headlights pick up the Gore point exactly where the stationing said it would be, watched the green sign come up out of the dark with its number and its wrongness and its missing destination legend. And as we dropped down the ramp with the blade throwing a clean white wing into the ditch, I looked down the loop ahead of us, into the fresh, unbroken snow at the bottom. There were tire tracks coming off the loop. We plowed over them and kept the blade down and kept moving,